Hey, it's Dave Duford here at davidduford.com, where I help insurance agents like you become top producers. And in this video, I'm going to propose the concept that your closing ratio, it matters, but not really that much. And in fact, there is a ratio that is way more important and actually pertains to a lot more of your overall financial success in this business. And we're going to talk about that right now and why you should shift your focus away from closing ratios to actually what we're going to talk about now. So what could possibly be more important than closing ratios? You probably are concerned, how many sales do I get out of each of my leads or presentations that I see, as being kind of like the de facto number one most important measurement of your success. And while every ratio has some level of importance, the truth is there's one ratio only, that literally is the predominant reason why and determinant of whether or not you're successful in this business of selling insurance or not. And what is that ratio? It is return on investment. So simply put, return on investment is a measurement of how much in gross sales you've received, actually net sales as I like to measure it, over the amount of income or amount of expense it took to cost of doing business, the amount of money and expenses it took to generate those revenues. So why is this, first of all, more important than anything else? So first of all, it tells you everything you really need to know, right? So let's look at it this way. If my gross commission is $500,000 and I make $100,000, or I sell, or I have to work $100,000 in leads, or my total cost of doing business cumulative is $100,000, I know that for every dollar in marketing, I'm getting $5 in return on my investment. And if through a little bit of math, we can find out I'm making $400,000 net before taxes, okay? So at the end of the day, to me, that's what matters more than anything. In fact, maybe you can even lower that down and you're only making $300,000 on a $100,000 investment, meaning you net, after accounting for your cost of doing business, $200,000. And yeah, and if you start to, and what's cool is, and it kind of blows your mind and shoots the whole closing ratio thing off as far as being as very important. If you do the math, you probably are going to be in a position where your closing ratio is at or slightly below 20%, assuming the rest of your numbers, like your case size and so on and so forth, are around what is considered to be average. But I would implore you to consider, who cares if your closing ratio is lower than 25 or 30%, like some of the greats are in this business, when at the end of the day, you're making $200,000 a year. You're making a top 5% income in America. That ain't bad whatsoever. And who cares if it takes $100,000 to make $200,000? You made $200,000. So the point is your ROI tells you ultimately everything you need to know, because it's really, the main thing is what's in your bank account, right? Closing ratios, case sizes, presentation ratios, these are all backwards numbers that kind of tell us in some limited capacity what's going on in your insurance business and where certain factors can be improved. But at the end of the day, if those factors are subpar, but you're making an income that's reasonable, that excites you, that is accomplishing your financial goals, that is helping you live the lifestyle that you want, I don't care if you could increase your sales percentage ratio, close rate by 5 or 10%, or increase your case size. Who cares? You're hitting your goal. You're making good money. Sure, there's always rooms for improvement. But there's a point where good enough is good enough, and that's point number two. Ultimately, you have to understand, and again, this is kind of a problem, I think, the improvement mindset people have, is that if you constantly feel like you must constantly improve, that you're always in a position of inferiority. And what I mean by that is that in business, you can always, think about going through your business life and through personal development. You can always find some problem with yourself, right? Or you think there's some problem, or there's some problem in your business you can always improve. Well, there's no peace of mind that comes from a constant search for improving different aspects of your game. There's always this feeling that maybe you're inferior in some way. Well, I'm here to tell you that there's a point where, yes, improvement is important, a betterment, reaching our optimal is a good thing, but there's a point when it's okay to be good enough. And in the context of selling insurance, it's important to understand when good enough is good enough and to not get divulged or off course on a ratio that doesn't make all that much difference, okay? So, like, for example, I got done talking to an agent the other day, very concerned about making sure he's doing the best he can, and I'm glad he is. He wants to improve, and he's at a stage in his career where it should be his primary focus. He's a beginner. And we looked at his numbers. His case average is 580 AP in final expense. That's right on target. His closing ratio is right at about 20%, and his presentation ratio is a little bit down. But we identified 2 things he can improve. And again, I'm a big believer in Pareto principle. 20% of the problems out there will if you can solve 20% of them, they'll be responsible for 80% of the outcome in a positive way. So you want to focus on the big picture and the big things. And in his case, it was really just presentations. That was it. That was the Pareto deal that we looked at, and I felt that if he just improved his presentation ratio, everything would lift. His sales, his income, everything. And the truth is, we didn't really spend all too much time talking about how we could improve closing ratio, because it'll improve over time naturally as you become more engaged in the insurance business. Reminder that he was brand new to this business for the most part, at least final expense. And B, the truth is 20% was good enough. If he could keep his ratios where they were as it relates to case size, improve his sit ratio. Look, I told him, I said, look, if you got 50 leads a week and you can work 50 leads a week selling final expense and you kept your ratios, dude, you're making $150,000 a year, something like that. You're making a really good income. Yeah, you got to work for it, sure. But the bottom line is if who cares if your ratio is 20%, 25%, whatever, as long as that number is being hit. And that's the deal regarding the 50 leads a week, is that the great thing about the insurance business is that you can scale what you're doing in many contexts in order to increase your income. A lot of agents think I've got to increase my sales ratio from 20 or 25% to like 30 or 35% in order to make the kind of income that I want to. And that's faulty thinking. Again, that's being led down a trap that will lead you to frustration and developing this inferiority complex about yourself. The truth is that if you think and compare insurance selling to baseball, how many baseball players had a 300 batting average? They made a hit 30% of the time. There's a handful, and kept that consistently through their business or through their career. On top of that, mind you, very few. However, there's plenty of good players that had a 250 batting average. They didn't make the Hall of Fame when it comes to batting averages go. But the point is you can have a good career and not necessarily have the best closing ratio in the same context, because you have to realize, and this took me a couple of years, you have to realize that ultimately what makes or breaks you in this business is not necessarily, I mean, it matters, but not as much, is not necessarily ratios, but how much work you put into your business to, as far as presentations go, to achieve and leverage your numbers. So what I help agents strive to do is to recognize when good enough is good enough. And then if they're not happy with their income at that point, once we look at their numbers, well, then the focus always usually comes down to scalability. Well, okay, you're running 20 leads a week, you're making and clearing $6,000 a month, let's say, in advances. You want to double that? Well, you're probably going to do the same thing, same activity, same type of people, if you just, even if you double your income or double your lead production. You're not going to do anything different but work more. And that's just a reality of this business. It's more likely that once you've tapped into the business and you kind of worked your numbers the way they should be, if you want to make more money, it's not going to the mat and coming up with ways to take you from 20 to 30%. That's probably going to be impossible. I hate to say that, or I should say it this way. It's going to be very, very hard to do that. Relative to scaling up, oh, that's easy. You just buy more leads and you work more. So if you focus on looking at your business this way, the first step being find out what your numbers are, and that usually means a month or two's worth of activity, figuring out what your closing ratio is, what your ROI is, all the other factors. What that's going to allow you to do is figure out, well, that's how what your numbers are. It's going to allow you to figure out what you need to scale to maintain that kind of income that you're getting on a longer-term, month-to-month basis. So this is why, in my opinion, closing ratio just doesn't really make I care about it, but not that much. As Herb Cohen would say, master negotiator, care, but not that much. You want to be cognizant of it. You want to make sure it's good enough. But ultimately, what matters is what's in the bank after you pay for your cost of doing business. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, make sure you subscribe. Also, visit my website at davidduford.com. There I tell you about how I recruit insurance agents across different markets, some of the products I sell, including the Seminar Marketing Mastery Program, as well as books in the Insurance Agent Inner Circle. Feel free to leave a comment below and like this video if you haven't already. And again, my name is Dave Duford, logging off. We'll see you next time. Take care.